Hello, my name is Aubrey. I'm so glad you're here because today I am here to convince you to read the Winnowing Flame Trilogy by Jen Williams. You guys do not understand. You do not understand how obsessed I am with this. This series won me over in a big way, and today I am here to desperately try to convince you to read it because I think this series is phenomenal. I need more people to read it. It deserves so much more readership and popularity than it currently has, so I'm gonna do my part. I'm gonna do my part and spread the word. This adult series is a wonderful blend of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. It has a fair amount of world building that I'm going to try to briefly explain to you, but there is a lot, so, buckle up. In the world of Sarn, we have three main creatures. One, human beings, no explanation needed, I hope. Secondly, we have fell witches, and fell witches are randomly born into human populations and nobody knows why. They are considered to be destructive and dangerous because they can leech the life out of any living thing and use it to create this winnow flame, which is this green magical fire. If a fell witch is discovered within a population, they are whisked off to the winnowy, which is basically a prison. And thirdly, we have the Abora, and the Abora are these elven-ish creatures. They're taller than humans and stronger than humans, and they live a much longer lifespan than humans. They're very into art. And throughout this world's history, there has been one common enemy, the worm people, also called the Juralia. By the way, if you have any kind of bug phobia, you don't want to read this series. There are beetles and spiders and giant maggots, so don't do it to yourself. Every few hundred years or so, the Juralia show up in their behemoth ships and wreak havoc. Time and time again, the Aborans and their tree god have been able to fight them off. The tree god provides a reign in which magical, mythical beasts like dragons and griffins are kind of born from the tree, and Aborans can ride these war beasts to victory. In the last war, the 8th reign, the Aborans were able to fight off the Juralia once again. However, their tree god mysteriously died, and with it the magical sap that was the root of their strength and long life. The Aborans quickly discovered that human blood would do something similar, which led to the Carrion Wars, in which the Aborans slaughtered fields full of humans and drank their blood. This ended up backfiring utterly because it turns out that drinking human blood for a long enough period of time gives the Aborans an incurable illness. So since the 8th reign, the Aborans have just been slowly dying off, succumbing to this illness. Their society is only a shadow of what it once was, only a few healthy Aborans remain. It's not looking good for them. We're following one Aboran in particular named Tormalin, who decides to leave his kingdom because it's just far too depressing to sit around and watch all of his people succumb to illness and die. He decides to use the rest of his remaining long life to go have some fun. He ends up getting hired as protection for one Lady Vincenza de Grazon. She goes by Vintage in the story, and she is my favorite character. She is a rich, eccentric woman who is obsessed with the mysteries of the Juralia. After the 8th reign, the behemoth ships that the Juralia came down in sort of crashed in different places all over the world. And these crash sites are weird. The flora and fauna surrounding them have evolved to be strange, otherworldly, and quite dangerous. These sites also tend to attract parasite spirits, which will turn you inside out if they touch you, so, don't let them touch you. Vintage, with Tormalin's help, goes to research these sites and try to uncover the mysteries of the Juralia because we just really don't know that much about them. They eventually run into a fell witch, Noon, who has recently escaped the clutches of the Winnowy. Vintage quickly invites her to come with them on their excursions, seeing the potential benefits of her powers. Together, they're trying to figure out the mysteries of this world. Why do the Juralia keep invading? What do they want? Why did the tree god die in the 8th reign? And is there any way to restore him? Why are the behemoth sites so weird, and do they have any useful secrets? What are the parasite spirits, and why are they drawn to the behemoth wreckage? They encounter many curious and dangerous things on their quest, all the while being hunted down by agents of the Winnowy looking to recapture their prisoner. And on top of all this, people all across Sarn are seeming to have the same nightmare, that the Juralia are coming back. I want you all to know that this is my first all 5-star series, as in I gave every book in the trilogy 5 stars. I looked back through my Goodreads and I'm pretty sure that this has never happened to me before. This series just has so many elements that really, really worked for me. First of all, the characters. I love these characters. I am obsessed with them. I would die for them. And as a character-driven reader, that is a very important ingredient. These characters are all so lovable in their own way. They're funny, they're charming, and they're just, oh, they're wonderfully messy. Vintage is clever and eccentric and curious, but her hunger to uncover these mysteries often gets her into lots of trouble. Tourmaline is vain and arrogant, but he's also just like deeply sad. He mourns the loss of his people and their looming extinction. Noon is running as fast as she can from her past. She's terrified of her own power, and she has trauma so deep that she can't bear to remember it. All of them together have just such excellent chemistry. They pick on each other and bicker and banter, but they also look out for each other, and you can feel how deeply they care for one another. I mean, eventually, of course, like they don't exactly start out that way, but you know, that's part of the fun. Watching them explore this world, make discoveries, uncover mysteries, make friends, make enemies, fall in love, grow. It's a delight, truly, truly a delight. All the things that I'm about to talk about next would not have worked for me if I had not fallen head over heels for these characters the way that I did. They're colorful, they're interesting, and most importantly, they're fun to hang out with. Okay, so the second thing that worked for me was the world building. And truth be told, I have never really cared about world building until this series. I mean, like, I notice when it's bad, but if you handed me a book and were like, it has amazing world building, I'd be like, okay, and? World building is icing on the cake for me. The cake being a marriage between good characters and good story. The thing about the Winnowing Flame Trilogy is that you can't really separate the world building from the story, because the world building is the story. The plots for all of these books, for the most part, really center around the unknowns of this world. Jen Williams does an excellent job of setting up interesting mysteries that we slowly uncover in each book. And because of that, this world just feels endlessly fascinating. I ate up every crumb of world building. I wanted to know everything about this world. I wanted to explore every nook and cranny. It's all just so cool. There's really no better way to describe it. The places we go, the things we discover, the creatures we encounter, it's all just cool, okay? It's just like, it's really freaking cool. Okay, and the third thing that really worked for me is the pacing. These are all 500 to 600 page books that felt like 300 to 400 page books. And by that I just mean that these books really pulled me in. Book 1, I'd say the first half was slow-ish. We're introducing several characters, we're doing some world building, laying the foundation. About halfway through though, I feel like Jen Williams just like reached up through the book and grabbed me by the throat and was like, here we go, bitch. Here we fucking go. I read the second half of this book in one day. It was a Sunday, I remember. I had things to do, and I did not do them. I just couldn't not finish it. There was no point at which I could have put this down and not gone into instant withdrawal. So where book 1 was kind of slow and then really fast-paced, I'd say that book 2 was more evenly paced. And I'd say that book 3 was like an absolute whirlwind, especially the finale. God. Once the epic stuff hit, I could not stop. Someone could have been like breaking into my house and I just would have let them. I'm gonna rewind a little bit to talk about books 2 and 3, because I think I've talked about book 1 quite a lot. Book 2, the gang kind of splits up in this one. Some plot threads were definitely more interesting than others, but overall I was still so fascinated by this world and really happy to be spending time with these characters. We get a lot more characters in this one, which was a little bit overwhelming at first, but then eventually became a lot of fun. And some of those characters are like my favorite addition to the series. There are some fascinating and unsettling mysteries in this one. Some of my favorite like plot threads came from this book. Alright, and then book 3, The Poison Song. Things were not looking good, friends. Things were bleak. Nails were bit. Rooms were paced. Jen Williams is not nice to her children. She was not nice to me personally, but she brings it home. She really does. This finale hit all of the emotional moments that I think a good finale should. We get epic reveals, tense battle scenes, losses, redemptions. We end on a very bittersweet note, which is my favorite kind of ending, even though this one really hurt. It really, really hurt. I read this over a week ago and I am still in mourning. Like, I have not moved on. I'm trying to read other books and mentally I just can't leave this world. I just sort of wander around my house like a ghost, staring out of windows and sighing. But it was a good kind of hurt. It was a memorable hurt. It's the kind of ending that takes real guts from the author and is going to keep me thinking about this world and these characters far longer than if everything had been wrapped up in a neat little bow. So while I love this series and I rated it a full 5 stars, I want to stress that it is not a perfect series, and I'm about to talk about some of those flaws because I don't want anyone going into this with hyped or unrealistic expectations. I just find that nothing kills joy quite like unrealistic expectations. So I think the first thing is that, like I said before, this is very much a genre bender. It's a fantasy sci-fi horror blend, and I think some fantasy purists might be turned off by the sci-fi elements. You know, I mean, we have elves and spaceships in the same series, and I think for some people that's just gonna be too weird. I mean, I liked it. I thought that Jen Williams made it work and it made the series more memorable and unique, but you know, I certainly don't think that's gonna appeal to everyone. The second thing that is especially apparent now that I've finished the trilogy is that Jen Williams leaves a lot of hanging plot threads. There were things that were introduced in book 1 and book 2 that I really thought were going to play a much bigger role in the larger plot, and don't, which if you're a more plot-driven reader will probably bother you. It disappointed me a little because I still have a lot of questions. There were things I thought were going to happen that didn't, but at the same time, everything we were given felt satisfying. Like I said, I really think the finale hit all the right notes. It does what it's supposed to do, and if I have lingering questions, then that just brings me back to this world and keeps me thinking about it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to still have threads to ponder and wonder about. And to be honest, some of my favorite and most memorable plot lines were things that didn't end up mattering all that much. And while I wish they had had a bigger impact on the story, I still had a lot of fun going down those rabbit holes. It added to the feeling of this world just being endless and fascinating and full of delightful horrors. In conclusion, I think the Winnowing Flame Trilogy by Jen Williams is one of the most underrated, underappreciated gems in the fantasy space. I had such a good time with this series. I feel so emotionally invested in its characters and its world. The moment that I finished the Poison Song, I started rereading The Ninth Reign. I've never done that before. I know that's not like an unheard of thing to do, but I've personally never done that before. I think that's a testament to how attached I feel. I want more. I would sell my kidney for a sequel series, a novella, a short story. Just give me a little bit more time in this world, I beg you. If a fantasy sci-fi horror crossover sounds interesting to you, if you want lovable, endearing characters, weird, fascinating world building, and plots that will have you by the throat, do yourself a favor.